In essence, if you overflow our missile silos and you turn off the technology, are you a friend or a foe? On the one hand, the new agey people would like to say, because a lot of the grays have come down and they put mind control into the minds, and this is my version, of the contactees, and they basically said, oh, save the earth, get it, bring the earth back into fruition. And I always said to them, save the earth for who? You see, nobody goes to that next step. Why do they want to save the earth? You think they're saving it for us? No. Not in the case of the service to self grays. Now, there are plenty of grays that are other species, et cetera, but keep in mind, who turned off the missile silos? What was their intention? First of all, it's an act of power, okay? Power over, okay? And so at a certain point, you have to look at that and you have to say, okay, are they really nice guys? Is there not an implied threat there? It certainly is saying our technology is beyond yours. That was in the 60s. This is where it's an interesting dichotomy, but what happens is we have to come to the secret space program now. And where are they at? Because look, if they found this out and you were in the military in the 60s or the 50s or the 40s even, where there is good evidence of, then at some point you have to ask yourself, are they friendly or are they not? And you cannot make an assumption when there's hundreds of thousands even of different races, and those hundreds of races at the very least are visiting here. Then you cannot, what are their agendas? You must begin to decipher those questions. And you can't just sit there and go, oh, la-di-da, they're all friendly. No, I don't think so. I wasn't there yesterday, but I understand that the Latino, the people from South America were testifying. And they were testifying to people being abducted and killed. And look, Linda Moulton Howe did a very good sort of talk on the cattle mutilations. But what people don't realize when they're looking at those mutilated cattle with no blood, that we're talking about a species that drinks blood. Hello. Okay? Some group out there.
Oh, I know. I get it.
They drink blood and fluids. Okay? They're not just there as geneticists. Okay? That's just one of the things they're doing. And these are the things that, became obvious in Dulce and the revelations from witnesses regarding Dulce, et cetera. This is the kind of testimony they didn't even want to touch in the hearing this week, okay? But there are ramifications, okay? They turn off our missile silos, then they kill our cattle, then the blood is gone, the organs are gone, and they don't just do it once in a while, they do it all the time. If you're doing a genetic experiment, you just need one piece of DNA. You don't need to come back and kill cattle over and over again. So something else is going on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And according to Duff, who says he has had access to the Majestic 12 files, he says that there's very horrific things in there and very horrific species that we're going to have to deal with and encounter. Today is Friday, May 3rd, 2013, and my guest today is Kerry Cassidy. So if anyone has any questions or comments for Kerry, the dial-in number is 877-342-6673. And let's go ahead and welcome Mark from Philadelphia. Mark, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Kerry, when you were on the show previously, on Mike's show, I listened to what you said, and you told us about a couple of shows, the Event and Fringe. And I'm not a television person, but I went and I checked it out, and I found it on Netflix, and I watched the Event, and I'm currently watching Fringe. I'm in the third season, almost through the third season. And what I'd like to ask you is, can you give us some details? Because you said there are some details in those shows that are actually valid, and they're real. They have a real connection to what's really going on. Could you let us know what those are?
Well, there's a great deal that is true about our reality that is put into those TV shows, and there's also some, I guess you might call it foreshadowing of possible events that will also come down here on this planet. At least that's what I'm hearing. So what you have in Fringe, for example, is time travel in which you've got, in essence, a black project scientist who has created a way to cross over to the parallel universe and go and get the son that died in this universe and bring him back over and bring him up in this universe. Okay, so in essence, is that possible? And I have a recent whistleblower, in fact, that I talk about at the very end of my time travel conference that says just that. It is eerily similar, his testimony, to what seems to be going on with our black projects. In other words, that capability is very real. Now, can we prove it? Can I prove it? No, not at the present time. I can simply say, watch that. The things that are depicted there are very close to things going on in the real hidden world of the military-industrial complex, but the hidden side of it. And they love to seed movies and TV with the truth, and it's part of the Illuminati sort of parameters in which they exist. This is what they must do. They actually must do on a karmic level to get away with it all. This is how they think they pay off their, if you want to call it karma or something else. This is how they pay the piper and also gain traction, because energetically they can use the energy when it starts to focus in a certain direction, especially if it's naive. But at any rate, so that's the fringe side. The event. I am told that there is a group of beings that are here that have made a deal with governments, and I've talked about this. So if you haven't already seen my blog and you haven't seen what I've been releasing there, I do talk about this in depth. You can see blog articles in which I address this. Offhand, I forget the name of the most recent ones where I talk about this, but in essence, there seems to be evidence, not just from one whistleblower, but from several, that is coming in saying that Africa is being traded off to an incoming group of beings who are humanoid. In other words, they look human, whose planet has been destroyed, just like the storyline in the event, and that they're trying to soften the blow for the populace by putting out the show called The Event, which, by the way, is still available for free, I believe, on NBC last time I looked. Which I think is who released it, and if memory serves. And the thing is that, so what you have is the seeding of the information by way of a so-called fictional sci-fi TV show, what is in essence something very real. The governments are aware of this, that some of them are on board with it, some aren't, that they're already arriving, that they're here now, some of them. And Africa will be the last to know, although some people, certainly in the intelligence field, if you want to call it that, might be an oxymoron, but to call it that. But at any rate, that field are aware of this. The question is, if they're going to do that, what do they do with the rest of the beings, especially if there's 2 billion of them, which is what was seeded into the event TV show. If indeed that was really true, and these are benign beings, but they just need a planet, space on a planet, their trade-off supposedly with the secret government is that they're giving them access to terraform other planets somehow, whether it be because they give us special coordinates in which to find those planets, or whether they actually give us advanced technology that we don't already have to use jump gates or whatever you want to call to get to those planets, or in other words, I don't know what the exact trade-off is. I know there's a trade-off. It may not be a trade-off that includes you and I. It may only include those people that they can take off planet at a certain juncture. They plan long-term, so all of this is very interesting. Now, whether it's going to happen, whether we'll be protected, whether, the ETs will step in and not allow it, whether we will get wise and not allow it, all of these are sort of questions.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I have another question for you on the event, which I found fascinating, and which I had intuitively felt something going on with this whole idea of us having nuclear reactors on planet Earth. And what's interesting in a couple of the episodes in the event, the characters basically refer to the idea that they're going to seed the technology of our Earth, because they need to ramp up their technologies in order to try to get back home. So they seeded our technology with this stuff called nuclear fission. So from your perspective, did the aliens bring nuclear fission idea to planet Earth and promulgate it across the planet? And also, is this part of a design to take us down, and where in fact they may have the technology or the ability to either neutralize it, or actually they may thrive on nuclear radiation? I don't know. Could you have any input on that?
The nuclear question is very interesting, and yes, you're right that was part of the storyline of the event. Interestingly enough, though, you see how the tables turned. Well, maybe you're not that far along in the event, or maybe you saw the whole thing. But basically, what ultimately happens? Okay, fine. Then you know that ultimately, seeding that technology in order to then go home with it didn't work. So maybe that was even a cover story to begin with. It's not said that way in the event, but if you can extrapolate that. In other words, yes, it's possible that we did get nuclear, sort of the technology from visiting races. We do know that the Nazis got a tremendous amount of information, and that they were very instrumental in the building of the atom bomb, for example, their technology, and that most of their technology seemed to come from off-planet. But however you get the technology, right now I'm reading Isaac Asimov, and I guess we have a break. So
well, we have a break, so stick with us. We'll be right back.
In answer to the question about nuclear energy, let me say this. I was about to say right before the break that Isaac Asimov in The Foundation talks about, the sci-fi writers seem to have, some of them, like Arthur C. Clarke, seem to have been read in to things in the secret the space program that others were not, and they seeded these into their novels. And so one thing that he talks about in this novel is nuclear energy, and how that makes a distinction between sort of a people that is ripe for invasion, from what I got from him, and that they have to be at that certain juncture before other races, that are beyond them in technology, etc., will even bother with them. And then once that happens, that's a juncture. And I have to say that I believe intuitively, as an intuitive, that we have not gotten to know what nuclear fission, what that's really all about. In other words, what we've been told, how we're using the power now, I think is still at some kind of remedial stage. And I believe there's some clues in these recent things like the event to where it becomes a reference point or a jumping off point. And I think there's more there than meets the eye, and I think that it hasn't been revealed. What it is, what it's really capable of, I don't know. But I do know that the sort of built-in obsolescence of our nuclear power plants that are right now basically becoming obsolete and, melting down as we go through the earth changes, and just over the years of disuse, or whatever you want to call that, misuse, this is built into the model. And that's with a purpose in mind. In other words, radiation has some kind of significance to moving into the fourth dimension. And it also has significance if you listen to this Aradia couple that I interviewed from Russia, one of whom was born in Chernobyl, apparently, or thinks she was. And they basically use radiation as food. And there's something very significant about moving to become a light being and changing the levels of dimensions or density that you are as a human and as we are as a planet. That is there's a key in radiation. That's all I'm saying. And I think it's worth investigation.